Okay, good morning again, everybody. My name is Jonathan Mokes. I will be facilitating today's discussions and presentations. It's great to have you all attending, and thank you very, very much for your time. We are really looking forward to introducing you to this innovative investment vehicle that will enable one to do well by doing good. I'm very pleased to be joined here by the founder and chief executive officer of Project 1743, Dr. Jane Wiltshire, and also by our director of Project 1743, Opar Suping. You will hear from both of them shortly. Both of them will be speaking, and there will be an opportunities for questions and answers and some engagement. But first, we'd like to share with you a video featuring a veteran of Operation Rhino, the groundbreaking initiative led by Dr. Ian Player in the 1960s to repopulate extinct rhino populations throughout South Africa.
Igama lami nguDiqeni Gumede, ngisuka eSiyembeni kodwa duzane kwemfuluzi enhlanganweni yemfuluzi emhlophe nemnyama. Ukhombisa ukuthi ukhipha amakhizane la konke lapha konke nala yonke le ndawo ephakathi lapha emphakathini yakwazi ukuphuma amakhizane njengoba eliwabona nje naka yiwo amakhizane ukuthathwa lokhu kusiwe isikhukhuza le duzane kwaseMozambique. Abantu abantshontsha obhejane bathathe impondo bafo obhejane kusho ukuthi bazophela kobhejane nemkhombe. Lokho asukuthandanga kubi. Manje sicela uNkulunkulu ukuthi asilekelele kubuyele lezi zilwanyana zibe ningi zande kuze nathi phela ingane zethu isizukulwana sethu zibone lezi zilwanyana ngoba mase iphela nje sokobe sesixoxa amanga.
That was, I'm sure you would agree with me, incredibly emotive and underscores the urgency of the situation. We do need to try something new. And on that note, I'm now going to introduce you to Dr. Jane Wiltshire, the founder and chief executive of Project 1743. Jane is a postdoctoral fellow of the African Wildlife Economics Institute of the University of Stellenbosch, after having completed her doctoral thesis, which focused, amongst other things, on the international trade in rhino horn. Prior to this, she founded and headed a boutique corporate finance house after successful careers in strategic planning and turnaround management. So Jane, over to you. If you could just switch on your video. And just for everybody attending, Jane is not in a city. She's in the bush together with the rhinos at the moment. So there may be some connection difficulties she may experience, but if so, we will endeavor to get her back on as soon as possible. Jane, over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. There is an answer to Mdiceni's plea, and I'm here to speak to you about a new dawn for rhinos, one where a calf can be born and have a reasonable prospect of living out its natural life without it being brutally cut off by poaching. I know this is not the story you usually hear about rhinos, but we know that it can be done. And why? Because we have chosen to acquire the Buffalo Dream Ranch, where a new calf is born every few days. How have they done this? Quite simple. There is a commitment to invest in rhinos. There's an commitment to invest in sufficient habitat and land for grazing. They have invested in giving the rhinos water. You need to stop your rhinos being poached. And then you sit back and let rhinos do what they do best, and they will take it from there. So if it's so simple, why isn't it happening? And let's face it, the situation for rhinos is really not a happy one. A recent paper tells us that in the Kruger National Park, the biggest population of rhino in the world, their numbers have halved in the 5 years from 2013 to 2018. The rest of Africa has fared even worse. At the time that the ban on trade in rhino horn was instituted in 1977, there were 29 countries in Africa that were host to rhino populations. How many are there today, 44 years later? 5. And 2 who have got remnant scraps of population. So what has happened? In fact, the ban, while well intentioned, has gifted the poachers, the middlemen, and the syndicates, the baddies, with all the benefits from the rhino horn trade, while leaving the costs of caring for and protecting the rhino on the rhino custodians. Outside of our operation and few operations similar to ours, rhinos have gone past the tipping point where more rhinos are being poached than the natural increase. This is just straight down to extinction. We know there is a better way because we have decades of evidence in our own and similar operations. And I would like to now show you this marvelous operation.
Cross the investment frontier by purchasing R+ units from Project 1743. Project 1743 is an innovative investment vehicle that is embracing the power of capital to protect and grow a dwindling wildlife population. We own the largest and most successful rhino captive breeding operation in the world. Situated on 8,401 hectares of South Africa's Northwest Province, this remarkable breeding operation is growing its rhino numbers by 6% annually, approximately doubling its population every 12 years. And no poaching has taken place for 3 years. We rely on the world-class best practice of an experienced, diverse team of rhino specialists. We have deployed state-of-the-art technology and equipment backed up by small professional teams based on site. We've mastered the trimming of rhino horns to deter potential poaching. And we've developed extensive facilities to enable the rhino population to live and thrive. The future of this safe haven and its rhino population rests on the investment potential Project 1743 recognises. By enabling investors to secure the project's assets and create liquidity from the currently frozen value of the 5.5 tonnes of stockpiled rhino horn, we can fund the continued protection and growth of its rhino population. Your investment will be in R Plus units, an asset listed on ZARX and tied to the real-world value of rhino horn. You will be investing in a R1 billion asset that includes over 500 million rand of stockpiled rhino horn, the world's leading operation in rhino breeding, an entity with captive breeding status which can trade legally in rhino horn, and a project that produces 100 million rand of horn every year. Become part of this remarkable project. Protect and grow this listed private sector population of rhinos. Invest in an innovative, future-looking project. Invest in a better tomorrow.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you've seen what has already been achieved on the Project 1743's ranch. The only thing missing is making it financially viable for custodians to grow, to protect and to grow the numbers of rhino. So firstly, why have we called this Project 1743? An odd name. That was the number of rhinos that were on the project when we named this, 1,743. Today, we have 1,823. At least that's what my notes say. However, this morning at 9:23, I received a WhatsApp, new female calf, Camp 10. We actually have 1,824 rhino this morning. So why did we choose the Buffalo Dream Ranch? Well, we found it a good foundation for a new and innovative model for growing and making financially viable wildlife populations. They had the 1,743 rhino that could form the foundation. They have decades of track record in looking after their rhinos. They have the best genetically diversified population outside of the Kruger National Park and the Umfolozi National Parks. They have had a greater than 6% per annum growth in rhino numbers, as you've just seen. And they were certified as a continental Key 1 population. What does that mean? It has to be a population with greater than 100 animals that is stable or growing. Tick. There has to be mate choice. Well, in every breeding camp, we always start out with at least 2 males. If the females are not happy with those males, we give them another male. It is a fact that, in fact, it is the females that decide who their mates are going to be. So mate choice, sometimes up to 7, tick. The breeding paddocks are between 200 and 500 hectares. So plenty big enough for normal social interaction and behavior, as you saw in the video clip. They also are exposed to the normal diseases and parasites, the ticks that Mditheni was showing you plague rhinos so much, they have them too. So these animals are in a situation that so closely approximates wild that they can easily be rewilded. In fact, 2 years ago, our black rhino went to Swaziland, Eswatini as it is known now, to the Royal Swazi Big Game Parks. They fitted in without a murmur. We can produce the rhinos that are needed for repopulating those areas of local extinction. So Project 1743 is a shining story of success in an area where it's normally tragedy and horrible pictures of animals with half their faces cut away. We're not bringing you that today. We're bringing you the opportunity of something different. But I have not spoken to you about the issue of how this gets funded, because it is not cheap. You saw what security is required to keep their animals from being poached. And not an animal has been poached since March 2017. And the way we are doing that is through R+ units. These will be listed on the Zarex Stock Exchange, so a listed instrument, underpinned by a set quantity, a defined quantity of horn that has been set aside. These R+ units will be immediately tradable anywhere in the world, even on your cell phone, as long as you have an account, no doubt. And because we are not transferring physical horn or selling physical horn, it will be able to be done legally and quickly. So, quite frankly, the investment in an R+ unit is an investment in the best investment you can make in the rhino's future, if that is all you're worried about. But they will also give you the potential for very sizable returns. When will they be tradable? Well, as soon as we list on Zarex, which will be very early next year. So, ladies and gentlemen, my presentation is about you doing well by doing good.
Great. Thanks very, very much, Jane. Before we open up for Q&A, I'd like to now introduce you to Opar Suping, who is a director of Project 1743, speaking to us from the Northwest. So Opar, welcome. And if I can hand over to you now. Should be able to speak now, Opar.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As Jonathan has said, my name is Opar Suping. My full names actually are Matthews Mangope Suping. I'm a proud Motswana from a rural village called Supingstad in the Ramotsirumuila local municipality in the Northwest Province. I must also add that I'm a proud investor in and a director of Project 1743. Now, we can all agree on the urgency of the situation in respect of rhinos. The tourism-driven conservation approach, we must all agree, is not working. We are facing the bleak prospect of seeing these magnificent species being wiped out. Now, it is my belief that Project 1743 is exactly the kind of innovation that is needed to rescue this situation. It has charted the path to protecting and growing this endangered wildlife species. Now, having been born into and raised by a farming family, heading goats as a toddler, to heading and breeding cattle and pigs under my father's stewardship up until this day, all this happening across the fence from Madiko Game Reserve, it only followed that one would be attracted to a project such as Project 1743. More than anything, the idea behind actually owning something that comes with the effort of trying to solve a very complex conservation problem, was a given. The bonus is seeing the phenomenal growth in the population. For instance, in the past 6 months, since the inception of Project 1743, the population has grown by up to 80 animals. Now, as Jane has said, there hasn't been a single poaching happening on the farm. I though want to talk about one further aspect of what Project 1743, a project operating as a pilot project for other private rhino owners, can achieve. One, Project 1743 will provide the blueprint of how we can democratize the ownership of rhinos and other wildlife species. For millennia, Africans have lived side by side with rhino, and we have a good track record of protecting and looking after them. Secondly, flowing from what Jane mentioned earlier, it does cost a lot, a whole lot, growing rhino, so that such cost can be prohibitively expensive. However, if there is a way to make it financially sustainable, rural communities can utilize their own resources, and in particular land and the skills acquired over a long tradition of looking after animals to sustain or increase the growth of the South African rhino population. Additionally, Project 1743 and the future legalization of the international trade of rhino horn have the potential to uplift rural communities and create jobs. To this end, we hope to work with government to take the success of Project 1743 into rural communities, and not necessarily being biased, but starting in the very province where the project is, which is the Northwest Province. In addition, it's important to point out that government is on a drive to introduce young people into farming. What other better way than for young Black South Africans to get into rhino farming? An initiative intended to help prevent rhinos from becoming extinct. I think that's a legacy, or rather, I'm sure that it's a legacy that we will all want to leave behind. Simple conservation is not ambitious enough to solve the rhino problem. We need to grow the rhino population, and this is what Project 1743 can help do. Furthermore, it will provide a blueprint to economically uplifting rural communities. And to this end, we can do well by doing good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very, very much, Opa, and thank you again to Jane. So the floor is now open for questions and answers. You are more than welcome to submit any questions that you have for either Jane or Opa by using the Q&A function. It should be at the bottom of your screen. So please feel free to do that. Just before we begin, Jane and Opa, we've got some greetings from Mexico, from Alejandro Estrada, saying, "I love rhinos and thank you for helping the conservation of this great species." So thanks for joining us at what must be very early your time, Alejandro. Looking at the questions, we've got a first question from Fernando Rueda, who is asking, where are you going to trade, i.e. buy and sell the rhino horn, as trade is still banned worldwide? Jane, would you be able to just maybe reiterate and go over the concept of R+ units and what we are looking to do?
Yes, I will gladly do that. So there are two parts to this answer. Firstly, the R+ units are derivative units. We are not trading in rhino horn per se. Very much as you would buy and sell gold futures, you don't actually go and get that physical bar of gold. Units would be the same. However, the Project 1743 is already registered as a captive being organized operation. And as such, it can legally trade. We have, however, chosen not to go that route, as we would rather work together with all the relevant authorities to structure a properly constituted trading platform.
Great, thank you, Jane. Then we've got a second question from an anonymous attendee, but how has COVID affected tourism conservation and the money collected in that way? Will this be a way to continue to raise money that is less seasonal?
So if I can pick that up, Jonathan.
Yeah, go for it.
What very much as tourism is a tremendous industry for South Africa, it is a fickle industry that can be affected by all manner of external shocks, security concerns, health concerns, as we've seen with COVID. You know, the meltdown of the economy, so people don't have the money. Tourism is a very unstable base to build our conservation efforts on exclusively. Therefore, something like the trading in rhino horn, which is not impacted by those external shocks, is certainly adding to the stability of growing our rhinos.
Great, thank you very much, Jane. Just at this point, I see that there are two raised hands, one from Berta and one from Elise. You are more than welcome to ask the question in either the chat box or the Q&A box. Oh, I see Elise has actually asked a question in the Q&A. So, Jane, I'm just going to give you Elise's question. Her question is, on the trade, I still do not understand it. will there be just a value attached to the rhino horn with the ultimate purpose of trading internationally?
Elise, the R plus units value will depend on perception, as do all securities such as shares, such as options. They all depend on perception. So yes, the perception of whether trade is going to be more or less easy will have an impact on those R plus units.
Thanks, Jane. I think Elise just has a follow-up question, is how will people actually get their returns on investment?
Elise, there are two ways in which people will get their returns. The first one is via the buying and selling, which you can do on Xorex at any time. And if they've gone up, you make a positive return. If they've gone down, you will make a negative return. Very much say as people who bought shares have seen them go down with COVID, but they have recovered exactly the same. So there will be that return from the price of the R plus units. There is also the possibility of, in fact, probability that rhino horn trading will be made easier. It is already legal, but will be made easier. And in that case, I would feel that there's going to be a considerable step change in the value of R plus units.
Thank you again, Jane. Then we've got a question from Elizabeth, just saying, what will happen to Project 1743 if and when horn becomes legal to trade?
Elizabeth, Project 1743 is the founding operation, which will continue to be the founding operation. The horn that is produced each year from the trimming to protect the rhinos to against poaching will go into the reserves and will be sold, will first be and will underpin the R plus units, and when there is more clarity on the legalization of the sale of physical rhino horn, people will be able to buy that rhino horn using those R plus units. So Project 1743 will continue to do what it does so magnificently, and that is producing young rhinos.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jane. Then we've got a question from Elise again, saying, how many shares are you selling at this stage?
Elise, there will be 5% of the shares in the underlying company, which will be the shares of the company will be listed. 5% will be immediately available. Thereafter, as with all shares, it will be decided on by the board. I'm not sure if you're talking about the R plus units. With R plus units, once again, the board will look at what is happening, take a decision. We will be listing sufficient R plus units that there can be a trade, but because nobody really knows what the value of the underlying asset, i.e. rhino horn, is, that will be limited at first, and we will take decisions as we get more information. In fact, by listing the R plus units, we are undertaking a price discovery exercise on rhino horn.
Right, thank you, Jane. We have a question from Buerta, and his question is as follows. As I understood, a buyer like me will be buying something like shares, i.e. the R plus units. Then I sell my shares to a customer in China. He doesn't want the shares, but he wants the product. How does the physical horn product materialize in the purchaser's hands?
Water, firstly, anyone can buy R plus units internationally as long as they have an account with a broker registered for Zarex. And at this stage, it is clearly stated, and they will know as they purchase those R plus units, that they are buying a security underpinned by the horn. They are not buying the physical horn at this stage.
Great. Thank you, Jane. Then we've got two further questions from Elise. The first one is, did you buy these rhinos from Mr. John Hume? And the second is, could you please elaborate on the 500 million rand you referred to?
Elise, yes. This, as I said in my address, we chose Mr. John Hume's Buffalo Dream Ranch to acquire, and we have acquired not only rhinos, not only the horn reserves, but also the land. We've acquired all. What was the part of the question there, Jonathan?
The second part of the question is, can you elaborate on the 500 million rand that you referred to in your presentation?
Okay, so I think that what she is speaking about is talking about the horn reserves of 500 million rand. At least at this stage, nobody knows for definite what the price of rhino horn is. As part of my doctoral thesis, I scoured all of the peer-reviewed articles and a lot of the grey literature, trying to find credible prices. I was not able to get a credible wholesale price. I did find several quite divergent street values or market values. I then applied, had said there is for between the street value and the producer value, and we then halved that and came up with a value of 500 million. At least that was our best guess. We made that offer to Mr. Hume, and Mr. Hume has accepted it.
Great. Thank you, Jane. Then we just one final question from Elise, and then I'll move to the question from Elizabeth, which is the question from Elise, Jane, is this a conservation venture or an economic venture?
Elise, it is both. My passion has been and is to stop rhino going extinct. I grew up in Zululand, not far from the confluence of the black and white Umfolozi rivers, where these magnificent animals got their start in life. So I am passionate about them. However, I am a businesswoman through and through, and what has been missing from the conservation efforts is that conservation, we have superb conservators in South Africa, but the focus is on conserving what we have, and that is always a, a bad business model. Therefore, we are looking at growing that population of rhino. And in order to do that, it needs to be properly funded. Not even the state can fund it, not even a man who was as incredibly wealthy as Mr. John Hume was when he started out on this can fund it. We need the power of capital and the power of those investment funds in order to conserve and grow our wildlife population.
Great. Thank you again, Jane. Question for Opar from Elizabeth. Opar, the question is, how do you see your contribution to Project 1743?
I thought I dealt with it. So I am from the Northwest, which is where the project is based. I am Black, I'm an African, which is in a way showing that this is not only limited to a certain few. I am from a traditional community, which also confirms that a traditional community member can participate in this initiative. I am also in the policy and regulatory space, so that I am also able to assist in the legalization of this trade. I am also able to lobby, so that the idea is to garner as much support as far and wide as possible to ensure that this legalization of the trade actually happens, and it happens on a platform that is accessible to everyone. I hope that covers it.
Great. I think very, very well. Thanks, Opar. We will shortly be wrapping up. So if there are any final questions, please, again, feel free to put them in the chat box or in the question and answer function. Jane, there is a question from Janssen, who would like us to please list the directors of the company. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, Janssen, you could visit the website to get further details, but maybe Jane, if you just want to run through that quickly.
Janssen, let me give you the directors. Not all of them have yet been registered with SIPC. It is a process, as you know. So you have met two of the directors today, myself and Opar. There's further Thabo Makgatla, who is also from the Northwest, is a CA, has served on several boards, including Impala Platinum, and he is going to be the Chief Financial Officer. In addition to that, John Hume will be a director and chairman for us to keep on board that incredible institutional memory of how to grow and care for these rhinos.
Thank you, Jane. Then just one final question from Elise. If you could give us some more information about the listing platform.
Yes, Elise. The listing platform is Zarex, which is a listed South African exchange, very much like the JSE. Perhaps the right analogy is, if the JSE is like the New York Stock Exchange, Xarix is like NASDAQ. So for smaller, niftier companies, they will list on Xarix. Xarix has listing requirements, so it is a very regulated thing to list on Xarix. It is perhaps not quite as expensive and onerous as listing on the JSE. You can go and have a look on their website. It's Xarix, ZAR, and then X, and you will get all the information that you need.
Great. Thanks very much, Jane. I think that brings us to the end of this particular session, but there will, of course, be a lot more. Daniela, who is someone else joining us from Mexico, says this is an amazing project, and hopefully the rhino population continues to grow, and greetings from Mexico City. So thanks, Daniela, and to everybody who's taken the time to join us this morning. We really do appreciate your time. If you want to find out more about Project 1743, please do visit the website. It is project1743.co.za. As well, if you've got any specific questions or follow-ups for specific details, you can email Jane directly at jane@project1743.co.za. And I think that pretty much is it. And thank you again for joining us. And thank you to Jane and Opal. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.